Hello and welcome to this training video. We will provide an overview of the DREAMAC Service Incentive Grant, also known as the DSIG program. This is our agenda for today. We will start with an overview of the DSIG program, then review the application process, explain how to request DSIG payments, and end with other employment and job opportunities. Let's begin with the DSIG overview. The DREAMAC Service Incentive Grant, or DSIG, allows students who file the DREAMAC application to earn up to $4,500 per academic year when they complete 300 hours of community or volunteer service at qualifying organizations from July 1st to June 30th. Students with an active Cal Grant A or B can receive the DSIG award for up to 8 semesters or 12 quarters. The DSIG program does have a limited number of awards, only 1,667 awards annually, but it is one of our underutilized programs, so we don't often reach that maximum award number. So, we encourage you to take advantage and connect with your CADA applicants to see if they qualify for the DSIG program. CADA filers can check a box on the CADA application to indicate their interest in learning more about DSIG. Next, let's talk about student eligibility for the DSIG program. First, eligible students must apply with the CADA and DSIG applications annually and must meet Cal Grant B eligibility, where the student either has a Cal Grant B award or a Cal Grant A award that met initial Cal Grant B eligibility. This means the student must be attending a Cal Grant participating school, have a high school GPA of 2.0 or a 2.4 GPA from a community college, have a household income that is within the Cal Grant B lower income and asset thresholds, and have sufficient unmet financial need of at least $700 for Cal Grant B. In addition, students must complete their community or volunteer service hours at a qualifying service organization, either the college campus itself or with another organization. And finally, students must agree to complete 300 hours of volunteer service with any of the organizations on the list of approved service organizations within the academic year from July 1st to June 30th. Now, what is a qualifying community or volunteer service organization? Any school on the Cal Grant eligible schools list, including their external partners and affiliates, are automatically eligible to participate in DSIG. That means if your student is volunteering on campus and/or campus partner, your institution does not need to apply to become a qualified DSIG service organization. Students can also volunteer at nonprofit organizations and at any federal, state, or local government entity. It should be noted that the work performed is not in advocacy of a political, social, or religious nature. Students can volunteer for religious-based organizations and advocacy groups as long as the actual service performed is not in advocacy of a political, social, or religious nature. And finally, volunteer service should be related to the participating student's field of study or is in furtherance of community service or a community need. Schools may overlook a great placement because it may not directly relate to the field of study. CSAC encourages schools to think outside the box when considering volunteer matches, as there are other things to consider, such as if the position is indirectly related to the student's field of study and provides transferable skills or knowledge, or if students have a strong interest in volunteering in a specific capacity or with a specific service organization. A qualifying organization must have been established for a minimum of 2 years before students can begin volunteering. Organizations can submit the Service Organization Registration Form to register as a qualifying organization. CSAC will verify that the organization meets the criteria shown earlier. Next, let's talk about the DSIG application process. All student forms needed for the DSIG program are available on the CSAC website. On the link provided at the bottom of the slide, students can find informational brochures, DSIG forms such as the grant application, supplemental application if volunteering at more than one organization, the payment request form, supplemental payment request if requesting payment from more than one organization, and the service hours tracker. Students can also find an FAQ specifically catered to students. Next, let's go over the steps on how to apply for DSIG. First, students can download the grant application from our website using the link on the screen. Next, it is important that students complete all necessary sections of the grant application to be processed on time. Students should start with entering the academic year for which they are applying for, and then complete sections 1 through 4 of the application. Section 1, Student Demographic Information, should be filled out by the student. Section 2, School of Attendance Information, should be completed by a financial aid administrator. Section 3, Service Organization Information, should be completed by the service organization. Up to 2 staff members can be listed on the DSIG application as certifying officials, and only those 2 officials may sign the service hours tracker. Finally, Section 4, all the boxes in the student agreement must be checked, signed, and dated by the student. Once the form has been completed and signed, all forms should be emailed to the DSIG inbox using the email listed on the screen. Processing time for approval is approximately 1 to 2 weeks, although it typically is done within a few days. Here are a few common DSIG application mistakes. First, students will sometimes only complete Section 1, or they may provide some information in Sections 2 and 3, but do not obtain the necessary signatures from the financial aid administrator or the certifying official. Second, the student agreement boxes in Section 4 are left unchecked and/or the student doesn't sign the application. Other common DSIG application mistakes are that the student is not a CADA filer, or they do not list a major or field of study in Section 1. Make sure all required fields are complete in the grant application so there are no processing delays. Once the student submits their DSIG application, accepted students will receive a welcome email from CSAC. A notification is also sent to the financial aid administrator and service organization. If the grant application is incomplete, CSAC will contact the student to make corrections and to resubmit their grant application. Once accepted, students can begin volunteering. The student and the service organizations will need to use the service hours tracker to document the service hours performed. Lastly, students can request payments after performing each block of service hours, 150 hours if going to a semester school, or 100 hours if attending a quarter school, or until all 300 hours are fulfilled. The hours must be completed before the end of the academic year on June 30th. After being notified of approval to the DSIG program, students will utilize the service hours tracker to document the service hours performed. The service organization must sign for approval of all completed volunteer hours. Up to 2 authorized individuals can be listed on the DSIG application as approved signers on the service hours tracker. Students can volunteer at more than one organization, and if they do, they will need to use a new service hours tracker to keep track of their hours from the other organization. Next, let's review the DSIG payment request process. To qualify for maximum DSIG payments, students must complete 300 service hours by the end of the academic year on June 30th and must request final payments by the year-end reconciliation deadline. However, students should not delay until the year-end reconciliation deadline to finish their hours or request payments. They should submit a payment request form for each block of hours they complete. For example, students at semester schools can receive up to 2 DSIG payments each year after every 150 hours of service work completed, whereas students at quarter schools can receive up to 3 payments in a year after 100 hours worked. Please note, students will receive reduced payments if their unmet need is less than $4,500 or if they complete less than 300 volunteer hours. We often receive this question: what if my student does not complete all 300 hours? Will they still get paid? The answer is yes, provided that they complete at least the minimum block of hours required to be eligible for payment. At a semester school, students can only receive payment after they complete each block of 150 volunteer hours, and at a quarter school, they can be paid after they complete each block of 100 hours. However, payment will not be prorated if a student completes just partial blocks of hours. For example, let's say a student only volunteers for a total of 275 hours. At a semester school, the student can only request one payment for the 150 hours they volunteered and be paid $2,250. The remaining 125 hours will not be paid because DSIG payments cannot be prorated. Alternatively, if that same student is at a quarter school and only volunteers for a total of 275 hours, they can request two payments of 100 hours and be paid for $1,500 for each block of hours. However, the remaining 75 volunteer hours will not be paid. So, if students are unable to commit to the full 300 hours, they should aim to complete their designated hourly blocks. However, they should not volunteer for prorated hours that will not be compensated. Nobody should work for free. Now, after completing the minimum blocks of volunteer hours and obtaining the signatures of the financial aid administrator and the certifying official of the service organization, students will submit the payment request form and service hours tracker to CSAC. Students who volunteer at more than one organization will also submit the payment request supplemental and the service hours tracker for the additional organization. Students will be notified once they are approved for payment. The payment request form is nearly identical to the DSIG application, and just like the application, students should complete sections 1 through 4, ensuring that all parties sign, like the student, financial aid administrator, and the service organization. And once again, here's another reminder at the bottom of the slide that service hours must be completed within the school year from July 1st to June 30th, and the deadline to request DSIG payments is the same date as year-end reconciliation. The exact reconciliation deadline is announced each year in June via our listserv, so be sure to register to receive CSAC alerts and receive them directly to your inbox. We will provide the link to register for listserv at the end of the video. After a payment request form is completed, students will email the completed payment request form and service hours tracker to the DSIG mailbox. From there, CSAC will verify the hours worked and will mail paper checks to the college financial aid office for disbursement to students approximately 4 to 6 weeks after receiving the payment request form. CSAC will notify schools and students once payments have been approved and mailed out. Here are some additional payment information. The initial DSIG payment will be issued after the student receives at least one Cal Grant A or B payment. This means that students must receive a Cal Grant payment for every term that they participate in DSIG. So in the scenario that a student completes all 300 hours in the fall term but has not yet received their spring Cal Grant disbursement, CSAC will hold the second DSIG payment until the spring Cal Grant payment is reported in Web Grants. Lastly, checks are made out to the student in care of the institution. Now, when a payment request is received before a Cal Grant payment has been reported in Web Grants, CSAC will send a reminder email to the financial aid administrator. If campuses do not respond within 24 hours, students will be notified that their DSIG payment request was not approved and to email the DSIG inbox once their Cal Grant has been dispersed so that CSAC can then begin the DSIG payment process. A quick tip: campuses can send payment requests on behalf of students after Cal Grant payments have been posted. Doing this eliminates the possibility of missed payments. Here is a quick summary of the responsibilities from CSAC and the Financial Aid Office. CSAC will verify that the student has received at least one Cal Grant A or B payment, that the required volunteer service hours were completed at a qualifying organization, and that students are enrolled at least half-time. If all criteria is met, CSAC will issue a check in the student's name in care of the institution. Checks will be mailed to the Financial Aid Administrator for direct disbursement to students, and CSAC will email both the student and the college financial aid administrator who signed the payment request once checks have been sent. Next, financial aid offices should work their rosters as normal, report student enrollment and pay Cal Grant accordingly each term, and notify students once checks are available for pickup or disbursement into student account at the institution. If you intend to apply DSIG funds to an outstanding school balance, make sure you are following your campus policy on Cal Grant Access Award disbursement. An important tip: colleges should save all approved payment confirmation emails as they are needed for reconciling DSIG funds. DSIG funds are paid in the form of an increased Cal Grant Access Award. Per the Cal Grant Handbook, institutions are required to establish and publish a policy that informs students of their options regarding receipt of their Cal Grant A or B Access Award, and if applicable, Cal Grant C books and supplies. Institutions with a default access policy that automatically applies Cal Grant funds to any outstanding campus charges must also provide students the alternative to receive funds directly. Additionally, this policy must be posted for students to see, such as in the Financial Aid Office, on student portals, or an authorization form for the student to sign, like the example on the screen. It is particularly important for those institutions that apply access funds towards student balances to be aware that students have earned their DSIG funds through volunteer work. Therefore, payments should go directly to the student unless the student has provided written consent to the school that allows them to apply it towards their school balance. In either scenario, please follow the same procedures for DSIG as for Cal Grant B when disbursing access funds. And finally, this last section will cover other employment and job opportunities for our DSIG applicants. Californians for All College Corps pays $10,000 plus potential academic credit to 6,500 undergraduate students who complete 450 hours of work. CSAC partners with California College Corps, allowing AB 540 Dreamers to participate after first applying for the California Dream Act Service Incentive Grant or the DSIG program. The initial 300 hours of service and the corresponding $4,500 are funded through DSIG, while the remaining 150 hours and an additional $5,500 are provided by California College Corps. This is a great opportunity for your students to more than double their DSIG earnings by completing just 150 extra hours of community service with the same service organization. California College Corps is available at 44 participating community colleges, CSUs, UCs, and private campuses. If you are interested, please visit the link displayed on the screen for more information. Another great resource is Immigrants Rising, a nonprofit organization that has scholarships and fellowship opportunities for undocumented students. We encourage you to share this with your students so they can see what scholarships they can qualify for. And if you need more information about DSIG, we have dedicated web pages for students and institutions to view program information, brochures, FAQs, and other DSIG forms. All DSIG forms and questions should be emailed to the DSIG mailbox at dsig@csac.ca.gov. Here are some key takeaways from today's presentation. There are limited DSIG opportunities, just 1,667 positions annually, so encourage your students to apply early. Complete all required fields on the application and payment request forms. Many students submit incomplete forms, which delays the approval and payment process. Students should plan to fulfill all 300 service hours to earn the maximum $4,500. And lastly, students should consider joining the California College Corps if attending a College Corps participating campus to more than double their DSIG earnings and increase it to $10,000. If you have any questions after this training, please reach out to the following contacts listed on the screen. And if you haven't done so already, please remember to subscribe to our listserv so you are up to date with any changes and deadlines. Thank you, and see you in the next video.